Good morning. The date is May 5th, 2026. Right now, out on the waters of the South China Sea, the world's most dangerous geopolitical game of capture the flag is being played.
Right.
And it's being played by civilians on jet skis, while tens of thousands of active combat troops just watch from the shores. So the geographical focus of today's intelligence brief is East Asia.
Yes.
And the title of today's presentation is Show of Force, U.S. Allies Drill in South China Sea, China Warns Taiwan.
And we are broadcasting this brief directly to you, our listener, to provide a comprehensive, objective overview of this rapidly shifting strategic landscape in the Indo-Pacific.
Exactly.
This deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI and is generated by Stylo News, which is the premier AI-powered news application. For a bit of context, Stylo News is actually the consumer version of the Stylo Intel Ops software.
Which is pretty incredible, really.
It is, yeah. That's a tool originally designed for enterprise operations across, government, military, and business sectors. What this means for you is that you have unique, direct access to the very same analytical engines designed to support global decision makers.
So our mission for this session is to objectively unpack the primary patterns of events in the South China Sea and, of course, the Taiwan Strait over the past 2 weeks.
Right, we've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. We will identify key decision makers, examine their distinct perspectives, and forecast the most likely near-term courses of action. Yeah. And we want to assure you this analysis will remain strictly neutral.
Completely neutral, yes.
We are presenting the operational realities on the ground and at sea impartially, without generating any fear or bias.
So with those formal parameters set, we can transition away from the traditional intelligence readout format and get into the actual mechanics of what is happening.
Yeah, let's get into it.
The sheer volume of military movement in the region right now, well, it really requires us to look at the board holistically.
It does. Let's start with the anchor event that's driving much of this recent posturing. So the operation is called Balikatan.
Translating to shoulder to shoulder.
Right, shoulder to shoulder. It's a joint military exercise running from April 20th to May 8th of this year, 2026. We're looking at a deployment of over 17,000 troops.
Which is massive.
It is massive.
Yeah.
But honestly, the raw number isn't even the most compelling part. It is the coalition itself.
Ah, right, the participating nations.
Yes. You have the United States and the Philippines, joined by Australia, Canada, France, New Zealand, and critically Japan.
Japan is a huge factor here.
Right. Japan is participating with roughly 1,400 active combat troops.
Yeah.
And given the historical sensitivities of Japanese troops operating in the Philippines since the Second World War, this points to a monumental shift in how these nations perceive regional security.
Oh, absolutely. The inclusion of Japanese combat personnel, it fundamentally alters the dynamic.
It's like a neighborhood watch program that suddenly upgraded into a synchronized high-tech security force.
That's a very good analogy. Furthermore, the specific hardware deployed completely changes the operational geometry of the region.
Right, the new weapon systems.
Yes, the U.S. moved long-range precision weapons to the Batanes Islands, specifically HIMARS and EMISIS systems. Operationally, the Batanes are positioned practically right over the Bashi Channel.
Which is a critical maritime choke point just south of Taiwan.
Precisely.
Let's actually clarify that hardware for a second, because the acronyms hide the tactical reality, don't they?
They usually do, yes.
So NMESIS stands for Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System. Rather than a massive, vulnerable warship, NMESIS is essentially a stealthy, unmanned, heavily armored truck.
Right, a mobile launch platform.
Exactly. One that can fire advanced anti-ship missiles and then just reposition before the enemy can even detect where the launch came from.
It's incredibly difficult to track.
So when the U.S. places these mobile anti-ship bubbles on islands that close to Taiwan, alongside Japan's JS Ikazuchi destroyer transiting the Taiwan Strait, it feels like putting a high-tech security system on your house, but pointing the cameras directly in your neighbor's living room.
It's a very aggressive defensive posture.
It is inherently defensive, sure, but highly provocative.
Yeah.
I have to ask, is this a permanent recalibration of the defense architecture, or just a temporary signaling exercise that gets packed up on May 9th?
Well, from the perspective of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, this is a necessary and permanent evolution.
Okay.
They view these deployments not as a temporary flex, but as the foundational architecture of integrated deterrence. The objective there is to ensure freedom of navigation and secure Philippine sovereignty within its exclusive economic zone.
So it's about holding the line.
Right. The U.S. is signaling a shift toward a hardened, multilateral defense of the first island chain. By linking these anti-ship bubbles across allied territories, they're attempting to mathematically complicate any adversary's ability to freely project naval power through those straits.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I am looking at the immediate response from the Chinese People's Liberation Army, the PLA, and it is fascinating how carefully choreographed it is.
The mirroring tactics.
Exactly. The PLA's Southern Theater Command organized Task Force 107 for live fire drills just east of Luzon. And the task force was led by the 05 class destroyer Zuni, which, and this is the key part, carries the hull number 107.
Yes.
This directly mirrors the hull number of Japan's JS Ikazuchi. I mean, it feels almost petty, right? Like high-stakes maritime trolling.
It does seem that way on the surface.
But I have to imagine there is a deeper tactical reason the PLA does this, beyond just sending a symbolic message.
Oh, absolutely. Symbolic messaging is certainly a factor, but the tactical objective is intelligence collection and behavioral conditioning.
Behavioral conditioning.
Yes. When Hull 107 shadows Hull 107, the PLA is gathering real-time electronic intelligence on the Japanese destroyer's radar emissions, communication frequencies, and evasion tactics.
Wow. Yeah.
And more importantly, Beijing operates from the perspective that these waters are part of their sovereign defense perimeter. They perceive the Balai-Katan exercises, particularly the inclusion of Japanese combat troops, as provocative foreign military collusion.
Right.
So the mirroring tactic is designed to demonstrate that the PLA can match Allied deployment ship for ship, maintaining a continuous, unyielding presence.
The mirroring is one thing, but the deployment of the Type 076 amphibious assault ship, the Sichuan, to the South China Sea for trials, seems like an entirely different category of escalation.
It's a massive technological leap.
The intelligence notes it is equipped with electromagnetic catapults for drone operations. Plus, we have the Liaoning aircraft carrier transiting the Taiwan Strait and combat readiness patrols circling Huangyan Island.
Right, Scarborough Shoal.
Yeah. So were these advanced Chinese deployments purely a reactionary tit-for-tat to Balai-Katan? Or are we seeing a long-planned display of naval maturity that was simply timed for maximum signaling?
It's definitely the latter. The deployment of the Type 076 Sichuan is the ultimate indicator of long-term strategic planning, primarily because of that catapult technology you mentioned.
How does that differ from what they currently have?
Well, traditional aircraft carriers, including China's older models, rely on ski jump ramps. That heavily limits how heavy an aircraft can be when it takes off.
Which in turn limits its fuel and weapon payload.
Precisely. An electromagnetic catapult uses linear induction motors to literally slingshot an aircraft off the deck.
Which means they can launch significantly heavier, fully armed stealth drones faster than ever before.
Exactly. It fundamentally changes the math of a naval blockade. This allows the PLA to project sustained air cover far beyond the range of their land-based missiles.
And how does Beijing frame this deployment?
Beijing views this as the lawful defense of its national sovereignty and a necessary modernization. What we are observing is the physical manifestation of China's transition from a historically land-based power to a blue water maritime power, one capable of complex multi-domain operations.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Relying on massive gray metal warships assumes the conflict takes place at a purely military level.
Right.
And the intelligence we've synthesized shows some of the most intense friction over the past 2 weeks hasn't involved warships at all.
Not at all.
We are seeing sovereignty asserted in what is called the gray zone by civilians and coast guards. Taiwan recently held a rare ministerial-level visit and conducted the Nanyuan 9 Coast Guard drills on Itu-Aba.
Right, Taiping Island. And we observed a parallel tactic from the Philippines.
Oh, the jet skis.
Yes, a civilian coalition group called This Is Ours organized a maritime mission to Pag-asa Island. We are talking about civilians navigating contested waters to deliver fuel and supplies, literally waving the Philippine national flag from the back of jet skis.
It is a brilliant, albeit terrifying, exploitation of legal loopholes. It's like a high-stakes game of capture the flag, but played with jet skis and civilian supply boats instead of military destroyers.
It's a game of chicken where you dare the other side to strike first.
Exactly. And on the Chinese side, the state-funded maritime militia operates under a similar logic. The intelligence highlights hundreds of fishing vessels acting as a persistent physical presence, basically dropping anchor to deny access to other nations.
Yes.
There are even recent allegations of Chinese vessels intentionally dumping cyanide near Second Thomas Shoal.
Which is devastating environmentally.
It is. But if the goal is territorial control, Environmental destruction of a reef achieves that by making it uninhabitable and economically dead.
That's a grim but accurate assessment.
So my question to you is about the mechanics of this strategy. Do these civilian actions actually lower the threshold for conflict? Or are they an effective way to call a geopolitical bluff without triggering a war?
It revolves entirely around the concept of threshold management.
Okay, threshold management.
Right. International law and global mutual defense treaties, like the one between the U.S. and the Philippines, are generally triggered by an armed attack by a military force.
Sure.
Gray zone tactics are engineered to stay deliberately below that threshold. If a naval destroyer fires a missile at another warship, that is an act of war.
Right.
But if a Coast Guard vessel uses a water cannon on a wooden supply boat, or a fishing fleet simply refuses to move, it creates a crisis that cannot easily be solved with military retaliation without the retaliator looking like the aggressor.
So it is weaponized ambiguity.
Exactly. And for Philippine leadership, it is an incredibly delicate balancing act. They face immense domestic pressure to defend their territorial waters aggressively.
But they're also deeply economically entangled with China.
Yes. Utilizing civilian actors and Coast Guard units allows them to assert their presence and push boundaries without crossing the fatal line into armed conflict. It places the burden of escalation squarely on the opponent.
But relying on civilian coast guards to aggressively assert dominance assumes the major military assets, specifically the U.S. Navy, might be tied up elsewhere.
Which they are.
Right. The intelligence suggests they absolutely are right now. This regional tension is deeply connected to a massive resource strain on the U.S. military, stemming from the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz and ongoing U.S.-Iran tensions.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the interconnected nature of global security is severely testing U.S. capacity.
How so?
Washington has been forced to redeploy major carrier strike groups, including the USS Abraham Lincoln, out of the Pacific theater and into the Middle East to secure energy choke points.
Yeah.
This has resulted in a reported 30% drop in U.S. aerial reconnaissance flights in the Pacific over the last quarter.
A 30% drop in eyes in the sky is a massive blind spot.
It really is.
And aerial recon isn't just about taking pictures. It is the tripwire of deterrence. When the PLA or the maritime militia sees a 30% drop in U.S. surveillance, the mathematical risk of them pulling off a surprise gray zone maneuver like, say, seizing a contested shoal drops significantly.
Because they know the response time is delayed.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the Middle East energy crisis is sending shockwaves through East Asia. Japan and South Korea are being forced to desperately rethink their maritime trade routes because the energy they need to survive flows right through those contested waters.
Which brings us to a critical diplomatic maneuver that occurred just days ago. The U.S. and Indonesia formally elevated their relationship to a major defense cooperation partnership.
Right, and this agreement is laser-focused on securing the Malacca Strait.
It is.
Looking at the map, the Malacca Strait sits right between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. It is the vital artery connecting the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea.
Nice.
So if the U.S. is being pulled toward the Middle East in this multi-board chess match, does this U.S.-Indonesia partnership represent a strategic move to secure the back door, the Malacca Strait, while the front door, the Taiwan Strait, is under pressure?
That is a very fair and accurate assessment of the strategic calculus. The Malacca Strait is arguably the most vital maritime choke point on the planet.
Okay.
An overwhelming percentage of the energy imports bound for China, Japan, and South Korea flow through that narrow corridor. Decision makers in Washington realize that a diminished U.S. naval presence in the Pacific creates a vulnerability.
So they need regional partners to step up.
Exactly. By upgrading the defense partnership with Indonesia, the U.S. is attempting to build a resilient, localized security architecture. They are empowering regional partners to lock down critical supply chains so American assets don't have to be stretched across every square mile of the ocean.
It is an intricate, multi-layered situation. We have stealth missile trucks on islands, electromagnetic catapults launching drones, civilians on jet skis, and global energy blockades, shifting military assets thousands of miles away.
It's a lot to track.
It really is. So to make sense of where this is going, let's synthesize the intelligence gathered from the Stylo News platform. Specifically, we're looking at the sentiment analysis across traditional media and social networks, tracking hashtags like Taiwan Strait and Balikatan 2026.
The data reveals three highly distinct, siloed perspectives.
Break those down for us.
Well, first, within the U.S. and its allied nations, sentiment heavily supports deterrence. The public and policymakers view these massive joint exercises as a stabilizing necessity against expansionism.
And the Chinese perspective.
In stark contrast, domestic sentiment within China is robustly unified behind the defense of national sovereignty. They perceive the Allied buildup, particularly the Batane's deployment and Japanese involvement, as hostile military encirclement designed to contain China's rightful rise.
And what about the nations caught geographically in the middle? Because they have a lot to lose here.
The ASEAN countries, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, are projecting strict panicked neutrality.
Panic neutrality. That's a vivid way to put it.
It's accurate, though. The prevailing sentiment among their populations and leaders is a desperate advocacy for adherence to UNCLS, which is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Right.
They are advocating for peaceful dialogue because they understand that any kinetic conflict between superpowers will immediately spill over and devastate their local economies and security.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, in the coming weeks? Because the rhetoric online often points toward imminent World War III, but the mechanics on the ground usually tell a different story.
That is a critical distinction to make. Based on the aggregated intelligence, a full-scale amphibious invasion of Taiwan is unequivocally not assessed as imminent.
Let's explain why that is, because it's not just a guess. It comes down to logistics, right?
Exactly. Modern surveillance makes it physically impossible to hide the logistical plumbing required to initiate a war of that magnitude. We are actively monitoring the data, and there is zero evidence of the massive mobilization required.
What would that mobilization look like?
Well, we would be seeing emergency drawdowns of blood supplies and medical equipment. We'd see the requisitioning of civilian roll-off ferries, which would be absolutely mandatory to transport armored divisions across the strait.
But we aren't seeing any of that.
No. The supply depots remain at baseline operational levels.
Okay, so no logistics means no imminent invasion, but that doesn't mean the temperature is dropping.
Far from it. The risk trajectory remains sharply upward. The most likely near-term events, specifically following the conclusion of the Balikatan exercises on May 8th, involve sustained, high-intensity gray zone pressure.
So more jet skis and water cannons.
Yes. You should also anticipate selective economic coercion targeting specific industries in Taiwan or the Philippines. Expect a measurable uptick in state-sponsored cyber operations targeting infrastructure.
Wow.
And most visibly, expect sustained, highly publicized naval patrols from both Chinese and allied forces. Both sides will continuously attempt to normalize their physical presence in these contested waters, basically daring the other to intervene.
It is a relentless geopolitical grinding of gears, and maintaining clarity on these dynamics is just essential. That actually brings us to the conclusion of our formal intelligence brief. The insights and data synthesis you heard today were generated using the Stylo News application.
Yes, Stylo News is a powerful mobile and desktop platform that allows you to customize your own personal intelligence style briefs. It aggregates and analyzes data from over 250 traditional news sources globally, alongside real-time data streams from X.
The platform includes advanced analytical tools that help you cut through the noise. Features like the Location AI bot mathematically map out global events to show you proximity risks.
And there's the multilingual intelligence engine, which breaks down language barriers, allowing you to read sentiment from foreign press in real time.
We highly encourage you to subscribe at www.stylonews.com to access AI-powered news on demand.
And with the formal briefing concluded, I think we can safely drop the 1960s news anchor personas.
Oh man, it is always a relief to step out of the vintage delivery.
It really is.
We really want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Geopolitics can easily feel overwhelming, but understanding the why and the how behind the headlines makes it all much more navigable.
We hope we are able to provide clarity on how all these complex mechanisms, from the Strait of Hormuz to the catapults on the Type 076, actually connect and influence one another.
Please reach out to us and request topics for future deep dives. We are here to investigate the subjects you are most curious about. And make sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms.
But before we sign off, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
What's on your mind?
We spent a significant amount of time today analyzing the gray zone. If civilian actions like a local coalition running supplies on jet skis or a fishing fleet dropping anchor on a reef are becoming the new hyper-tense front lines of international territorial disputes, how long will it be before a simple, non-military accident at sea forces the activation of a global mutual defense treaty?
That is a chilling thought. When civilians are playing chicken alongside destroyers, the margin for error is effectively zero. It's definitely something to think about. Until next time, stay curious.